So Neil, the Champions Trophy has generally been regarded as kind of competition that everyone's kind of blasé about. But given what's happened in the cricket world the last couple of weeks, and especially with the IPL, where a lot of South African players were involved as well, this is quite a big deal for cricket right now, isn't it?
I think it's a massive deal for cricket internationally, and from a spectator point of view, and a playing point of view, and an administrative point of view as well. I know that what you're saying about the Champions Trophy was regarded for a long time as a sort of a mini World Cup, but without much gravitas to it, and there was a knockout format. The format seems to have changed every edition, but currently, and this is the irony for me, is that I think it's the best tournament in the world. I
Yes, so
think
do I actually.
every game is relevant, doesn't it? Every game means something. I mean, it almost has a knockout feel from the very beginning. You know, you're really struggling to make the semi-finals if you lose the first game. But yeah, but the big picture, there's the tournament picture, but the big picture, I think it's so important that the players and everybody buys into the idea of regaining some kind of credibility.
Yeah, and from the fans around the world. I mean, the thing with the IPL is that it's an Indian tournament, sure, but especially in countries like South Africa and Australia, where so many players are parts of it, it's not as though you can just avoid the problem and say, "Oh, it's India's problem."
It's a global problem, isn't it? I mean, there's players from all over the world, apart from Pakistan, that play in the IPL, and I think that while India should be very proud in many ways of the IPL, it's an Indian product. It was born and conceived, and by and large, apart from the edition in South Africa, has been run in India. I think that there seems to me to be it's one-way traffic using the resources by that I mean players from the rest of the world, using the best of those resources without really, apart from huge paychecks for those players.
And the boards get a cut of that as well.
Yeah, but I think that there needs to be, I think, more of a moral, ethical leadership shown by the BCCI, and perhaps more care shown, other than in form of a paycheck, to the boards who are affected by that huge window of the IPL.
And looking ahead to this tournament itself, I mean, there are some people who enjoy the 350 plays, 350 games you get in the subcontinent. For a lot of people, one day cricket in England, where you have the ball doing a bit early on uh, and batsmen struggling, and then you have an opportunity to make runs, they tend to enjoy these conditions a lot more. Are you one of them? Which camp do you fall into?
Yes, I definitely am. I mean, cricket is a game between bat and ball, isn't it? It's not between bat and bat. And I think that's great. I mean, provided that India don't keep spoiling things by bowling the opposition out for 65, then we could be in for some really good games. There's the South Africa's infamous tied semi-final, also against Australia at Edgbaston in 1999, and that was 203 plays 203 or 213 or whatever it was, but it was a low-scoring game, and so I hope we do. I mean, but it can also. Yeah, I was going to say, 230, 240 can be a really good game, but I hope that we don't get too many of the 200 chased by a very, very slow, laborious crawl towards. That can be very dull, but I think this short, sharp, in and out 50 over format's great. I'm excited by it.
What about the two new balls? In some ways, I look forward to it, but on the other hand, I'm thinking, okay, what happens to the reverse swing? Because you're not going to get the ball to reverse if it's just 25 overs with one ball.
I'm not happy with it. I mean, I understand why they did it, and you need uniformity, don't you? And they tried the standard ball change after 34 overs, but that also didn't work because what is a replacement ball? How can you be sure of the quality? So that was always a subjective thing. So they had to go something that was numerical and can be enforced across the board. But two new kookaburras in English conditions. It's gone a bit too far, really, hasn't it? the whole two new ball thing was more for the subcontinent, wasn't it?
Yeah. Where it's needed as well.
I think it works
Yeah,
there
yeah.
because you actually can get some reverse swing towards the end of
Yeah.
25 overs. But in English conditions on lush outfields, I think we're going to see teams playing 7 specialist batsmen wherever possible.
Yeah, unless you're lucky enough to have a lot of all-rounders like the West Indies.
And South Africa
Yeah,
used
South
to.
Africa.
Used to.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the absence of, we haven't talked about the absence of Jacques Kallis, but, the South African team, for the first time ever, you've got 4 bowlers, a bowling all-rounder in Ryan McLaren who will probably have to bat a place too high at number 7. But, where are the Lance Klusners and Nicky Boyer and Sean Pollock and Andrew Hall and all those guys
Or
who could
even
bat?
Johan Botha, who helped win the World Cup game against India 2 years ago.
South Africa, you routinely batted down to number 10. But, there's Robin Peterson at number 8. Well, you'd like him at 9, really. But Dale Steyn and Morne Morkel will, of course, be very upset with me for implying that they can't bat. They're not all-rounders.
But what are your realistic expectations from South Africa this tournament? Do you think they could finally, that jinx has been around for a while now? I don't want to mention the C word.
My expectations are lower than I can recall for any ICC tournament. Lower than any. I think that 9 of the players have played no cricket for 2 months. There are only 5 who had any meaningful cricket in the IPL. The absence of an all-rounder, JP Duminy perhaps being asked to bowl the 5th bowler's allocation of 10 overs. There are lots of reasons why South Africa should not reach the semi-finals. I think that there are 5 or 6 more informed teams, perhaps even better balanced teams. Having said that, I wouldn't be surprised if they reach the semi-finals and the final. It's just that there'll be less disappointment in South Africa if they don't this time.
And what about the other teams? Which teams are you looking at?
India. It was interesting to hear Dhoni say that the players might be tired, but I don't know how much fatigue will play a role in a tournament
I think
like
they're
that.
quite relieved to be out of India in the first place, given.
Well, mentally, mental fatigue, physical fatigue. But I think India will be very hard to beat. West Indies I like as well.
Yeah.
Explosive batting all the way down, lots of options. But I actually wrote a preview last week before anybody had played a warm-up game, and I thought Umesh Yadav is going to be a real handful. And he was against Australia, with him and Ishant. The spinning bases are covered, the fast bowling is covered. They bat everywhere. Not sure about the opening combination, but I think India are strong favourites. You?
I'm looking at the West Indies, and I have a good feeling about the New Zealand side as well. A little less so now that Trent Bolt's gone home, but some good bowlers in there, and Ross Taylor seems to be back in form.
Mitchell McClenaghan, who took Trent Bolt's place, played against South Africa and was really impressive. I mean, he's a like for like replacement, except he's quicker and he swings it. So I wouldn't be worried about that. But New Zealand are always there or thereabouts, aren't they? Perennial semi-finalists. I agree. I like the look of them. Is Vittori fit?
Yeah, I think he is. The 2 Ashes contestants don't seem to be, on the ball so much for this tournament.
I think fitness is the thing for England.
Or how much of it is fitness and how much of it is them holding back? Because I think it's a bit of both.
Yes. If you're English or Australian, then it's all about the Ashes, isn't it? It's Ashes first, second, and third. And that's just round the corner. And, I think that if Stuart Broad was to miss a couple of games in the Champions Trophy and was able to win a couple of Ashes Test matches, I think most England fans would take that. But don't Australia look in disarray? I mean, it's one thing to lose a practice match, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. It's not even an official game, 15 aside. But to be bowled out for 65...
Yeah, and on a pitch that wasn't doing that much. in conditions that weren't that bad. It wasn't grey and overcast, and the ball was moving around like this. Yeah, it was a shocking performance. But
Especially having reduced India to 55 for 5. I mean, if ever a side were guilty of taking their foot off the accelerator, that was probably it. India were 55 for 5, made 308.
yeah, I think we made 208 runs in the last 25 overs, which is ridiculous with 5 wickets down.
It's absurd. Well, and it's one of the reasons. There's on the one hand, I'm saying don't read too much into warm-up games, but that was an awesome performance. And I think if the Indian side, just to go back to that point, most of the players are glad to be out of India. That can really work. Adversity very often works in a team's favour, and if they were feeling a little bit under siege at home, as they often do, then perhaps they'll be able to play with some real scary freedom here.
And I think Cardiff also helps because it's not London, it's not Birmingham. There aren't 10,000 Indian fans around.
There are always 10,000 Indian fans around.
There weren't today or yesterday, but it might be tomorrow.
Yeah, look out for India.
Yeah, and one last question, which, if I was to ask you to pick 3 players to keep an eye on, who would they be?
Well, Umesh Yadav. I don't know why, just partly gut feel, but he's just, I think, really useful for English conditions and quick. Chris Gale. I mean, I know that's obvious.
Yeah.
Probably, I was tempted to pick a bolter from the pack, but if the West Indies do win, it's very unlikely that he won't have a really big tournament. And I guess I'll have to go for a South African, and probably another obvious one. But JP Duminy, he might have a terrible tournament because he might have to bowl 10 overs every game and bat at number 5, and it could all backfire for him. And remember, he's only played 2 games after 7 months off with an Achilles tendon repair surgery. But I'll certainly be keeping a keen eye on him.
Okay. Thanks for your time.